Over the next few minutes, we're going to go on a whistle-stop tour of the history of emotional research and theory. While some of the names here will be very familiar, others, especially those who are still working today, may not be so. The story is less about the individuals and more about the theory of emotions as it progresses, occasionally in a backward direction. Our story begins with two Greek philosophers, Plato and his student Aristotle, living around 350 BC. Plato, writing in his book Republic, introduced the theory that the soul has three parts to it: reason, spirit, and appetite. Each part had a role to play in the experience of emotions, but it was spirit that was most responsible for spiritual and emotional tendencies. He believed that a harmonious balance among the three parts of the soul was essential for achieving moral virtue and justice. Plato was often critical of the irrational and impulsive nature of certain emotions. He argued that reason was crucial in guiding human conduct and believed that emotions should take second place to rational judgment. Aristotle appeared to spend longer exploring emotions, and he documented his theories in the book Rhetoric. Many of his ideas continue to be used today. For example, he recognized a basic set of emotions: anger, fear, shame, pity, and joy. He classified them according to their intensity, their valence, in other words, whether they were positive or negative, and according to the situations in which they arise. He saw emotions as playing a critical role in the development of our morals. In another book, Poetics, Aristotle explored the emotional impact of tragedy on an audience. He introduced the concept of catharsis, suggesting that experiencing intense emotions, such as fear and pity, in a controlled and artistic context, could purify and elevate the soul. The next stop is with Thomas Aquinas, a Dominican theologian. Writing around 1250 CE, his work on emotions was largely influenced by the synthesis of Christian doctrine and Aristotelian philosophy. In his work, Summa Theologica, particularly in a section known as the Passions of the Soul, he explored the relationship between reason, will, and various emotional states. He too classified emotions according to their valence, how strongly positive or negative they were. Aquinas recognized the role of emotions in ethical decision-making, believing that emotions provide the drive or motivation for actions, and that when guided by reason and aligned with virtue, they contribute to morally upright conduct. The Renaissance saw humanists such as Montaigne in the late 1500s exploring the human experience of emotions in their writings. Montaigne, incidentally, gave us the modern literary genre of the essay and the innovation of writing about what we don't know rather than what we think we do know, in some respects an essential aspect of reflective practice. Although not a scientist, Montaigne made observations on various psychological themes, including thought, motivation, fear, happiness, child education, experience, and human action. A little later in 1649, René Descartes, another French philosopher, in his book Passions of the Soul, proposed a dualistic view, suggesting that emotions were associated with the body, while reason and thought were associated with the mind. This work has been described as the beginning of modern work on emotions. Despite his theological orientation, he was a natural philosopher, rejecting the idea that life needs an ultimate purpose. Descartes placed great emphasis on logic, reason, and rational argument, based on a body of accepted knowledge rather than direct observation. At almost the same time, in 1651, Thomas Hobbes, an English philosopher, in his work Leviathan, proposed a social contract theory to explain the role of emotions in society. Hobbes argued that individuals driven by self-interest and the fear of others form social contracts to maintain order and security. His emphasis on fear and self-preservation as motivators provided the foundation for later discussions on emotions in social and political contexts. Unlike Descartes, Hobbes believed in the importance of observations from life, and so he was an early empiricist. The 18th century saw the rise of empiricism, with philosophers like John Locke and David Hume emphasizing the role of sensory experience in shaping human understanding, including emotions. Taken to an extreme, they said that we are born with a blank slate and only develop our thoughts through later experience. Sentimentalism also emerged in the 18th century. It emphasized the importance of emotions and moral sentiments in art, literature, and everyday life. Writers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Laurence Sterne, and others contributed to the sentimental tradition, exploring the emotional and moral dimensions of human existence. At the same time, novels, especially sentimental novels, penned by the likes of Samuel Richardson and Henry Fielding, depicting emotional struggles and moral dilemmas, grew in popularity. We move forward to the last quarter of the 19th century. Wilhelm Wundt is often regarded as the father of experimental psychology. In 1879, he established the world's first experimental psychology laboratory at the University of Leipzig in Germany. This marked the beginning of psychology as a distinct scientific discipline. Known as voluntarism, Wundt's psychological approach emphasized the study of conscious experience and the role of the will in shaping mental processes. While not exclusively focused on emotions, Wundt's voluntarism laid the groundwork for the systematic examination of subjective experiences, including emotional states. William James, writing in 1890, and Carl Lang in 1885, both proposed that physiological arousal instigates the experience of emotion. Until then, emotions were seen as a reaction to a significant event. The James-Lang theory proposed that the state of the body can induce emotions or emotional dispositions. In other words, this theory suggests that when we feel tearful, it generates a disposition for sad emotions. When our heartbeat is outside its normal range, it makes us feel anxious. Instead of feeling an emotion and subsequent physiological bodily response, the theory proposes that the physiological change is primary and emotion is then experienced when the brain reacts to the information received via the nervous system. While there were differences in their approach, they both agreed that if physiological sensations could be removed, there would be no emotional experience. In other words, physiological arousal causes emotion. Their theories appealed to some, especially lay readers. For example, J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan, wrote a story, The Little White Bird, in which he suggests that fairies never say, "we feel happy." What they say is, "we feel dancy." Ironically, it was John Dewey who presented their ideas as if they were one, and gave this composite its name, the James-Lang theory. In doing so, he actually misrepresented aspects of James's thinking. This only really became widely understood when it was pointed out in 2017 by Lisa Feldman Barrett, but more on that later. No account of emotions would be complete without reference to the extraordinary work by Charles Darwin, published in 1872. The expression of emotions in man and animals was the result of years of painstaking observation of an incredible range of animals, systematically identifying the facial expressions and body language associated with various emotions. He argued that emotional expressions, such as joy, anger, fear, and surprise, have universal features that can be observed across cultures and recognized by individuals from other cultures. Darwin therefore proposed that certain emotional expressions are innate and not learnt responses to physiological changes. He argued that emotional expressions have evolved through natural selection because they provide a survival advantage. For example, expressions of fear might signal danger to others in the group, promoting collective safety. This idea laid the foundation for the modern evolutionary psychology approach to emotions. Although Darwin's work on emotions faced some criticism in his time, as some scholars question the idea of universal emotional expressions, his emphasis on the evolutionary and adaptive nature of them prepared the way for later research in psychology, ethology, and neuroscience. Freud's primary focus was on psychoanalysis, which involves uncovering repressed memories and emotions to providing insight into the roots of the emotional difficulties that clients experience. His work has therefore had a lasting impact in several ways on our understanding and interpretation of emotions. One of Freud's groundbreaking contributions was the concept of the unconscious mind. He proposed that a significant portion of mental activity and emotions occur outside conscious awareness. Emotions, according to Freud, could be influenced by unconscious desires, memories, and conflicts. Freud proposed a tripartite structure of the mind, consisting of the id, ego, and superego. Each component plays a role in shaping emotional experiences. His theory of psychosexual development emphasized the role of early childhood experiences in shaping emotions and subsequently personality. The stages involve the resolution of conflicts, and unresolved issues at any stage can influence emotional development. The concept of defense mechanisms, further developed by his daughter Anna, provided a mechanism by which unconscious psychological strategies are used to cope with anxiety and to protect the ego from emotional damage. Behaviorists like John B. Watson and B. F. Skinner contributed to the study of emotions by framing them as observable behavior shaped by environmental stimuli and consequences. Their work emphasized the importance of learning and conditioning in the development and expression of emotional responses, while rejecting the consideration of internal mental states in psychological research. The behaviorist perspective was influential but eventually gave way to broader approaches that integrated both observable behaviors and internal mental processes in the study of emotions. In the 1960s and 1970s, the therapeutic world saw a growth in approaches that tried to change our thinking processes. Aaron Beck proposed CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which saw negative and distorted thoughts about ourself, the world and the future as being at the root of emotional distress. Albert Ellis developed REBT, rational emotive behavior therapy, which emphasizes the role of irrational beliefs in shaping emotional reactions. Both authors argued that it was aspects of individuals' thinking or beliefs about events, rather than the events themselves, that influenced their emotional responses. The cognitive revolution has created legacies, the idea that it's possible to measure the effectiveness of therapies, the ways in which emotions and thoughts are interconnected, and the extent of individual variation in emotional response. Paul Ekman's work has significantly influenced our understanding of facial expressions, non-verbal communication, and the universality of certain emotional expressions. His work has frequently validated that of Charles Darwin. While Darwin, though, looked for an expression, Ekman introduced the concept of micro-expressions, fleeting, involuntary facial expressions that occur for a fraction of a second. These micro-expressions are often subtle, and individuals may not be consciously aware of them. Detecting and identifying these micro-expressions has allowed Ekman to explore deception and the deliberate covering up of emotions, as well as developing training programs to enhance people's self-awareness. In collaboration with the Dalai Lama, Ekman explored the intersection of emotions and mindfulness. This collaboration resulted in the development of the Atlas of Emotions, which categorizes and maps the range of human emotional experience. Robert Plutchik made substantial contributions to the study of emotions by developing the Wheel of Emotions, proposing a psychoevolutionary theory and advancing the understanding of the adaptive functions of emotions. While his work was strongly influenced by that of Darwin, Plutchik's innovation was the idea that relatively few emotions are necessary to explain the repertoire exhibited by man and other animals. He identified 8 basic emotions, and through combinations of these and varying intensity, was able to explain the range that we use in everyday life. In recent years, emotional research has diversified a great deal. The fields of neuroscience, well-being, and sociology of emotions have received increasing attention. While there are many researchers engaged with this work, Antonio Damasio and Joseph Ledoux have significantly advanced our understanding of emotions from a neuroscientific perspective. Damasio has conducted extensive research on the neural substrates of emotions. His work involves studying patients with brain lesions, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, to understand how damage to specific brain regions can impact emotional experiences and decision processes. This contributed to the mapping of emotions in the brain, highlighting the involvement of structures such as the amygdala, insula, and prefrontal cortex. Damasio proposed the somatic marker hypothesis, which suggests that emotions play a crucial role in decision-making. According to this hypothesis, emotions are associated with bodily responses, somatic markers, and these markers help guide decision-making by signaling the potential positive or negative outcomes of a choice. Ledoux's work has focused on the amygdala, a key structure in the brain associated with emotional processing. He's explored the neural circuits involved in fear conditioning and the rapid unconscious processing of emotional stimuli, shedding light on how the brain responds to and processes emotional information. Ledoux proposed a dual pathway model of fear, suggesting that there are 2 distinct neural pathways for processing fear-related information. The low road involves a quick subcortical route through the amygdala, allowing for rapid responses to potential threats. The high road involves a slower cortical route that allows for more detailed processing and conscious awareness of the emotional stimulus. Finally, his research explores how emotional experiences, especially those related to fear, are encoded in memory, and how the amygdala contributes to the formation and retrieval of emotional memories. Alongside the neuroscience developments has been a great deal of interest in emotional well-being. Lisa Feldman Barrett proposed the theory of constructed emotion, challenging the traditional view that emotions have fixed and universal neural signatures. Barrett argues that emotions are constructed by the brain based on the interpretation of sensory input, past experiences, and cultural influences. Research emphasizes the impact of cultural and contextual factors on the construction of emotions. She argues that emotions are not solely biologically determined, but are shaped by cultural norms, social context, and individual experiences. She contributed to the development of the predictive coding framework, which suggests that the brain generates predictions about the sensory inputs it will receive and updates these predictions based on incoming information. Effectively, the brain constructs emotional experiences. Barrett has explored the concept of emotional granularity, which refers to the ability to differentiate and label specific emotional experiences, challenging the notion of discrete and universal emotions, and proposing a more pragmatic and context-dependent approach. This encourages a shift from fixed categories of emotions to a more dynamic view that considers the variability and flexibility of emotional experiences.